Hello, my name's Cindy Davis. I'm a contributing editor of AV Technology Magazine. And with me today is Michael Lisi, National Distribution Manager at WolfVision. We're here today to talk about how the world has really been turned upside down. We all know that due to COVID-19. But we're also here to talk about where WolfVision fits into that picture. So Michael, let's start off. Seriously, the world's been turned upside down. And everybody's looking for a really good way to support web conferencing and their meeting environments and so much more. So what do you think here?
I agree with you. The world has turned upside down. And I think this is actually one of the most exciting times, with a lot of the things going on, even related to the rioting and such. You see, sometimes turmoil is really what is needed for transformational growth. Like things sometimes can get accelerated, progress can accelerate when everything gets uprooted and turned upside down. And so I think that there's a number of really critical areas of the conversation that have been highlighted now more than ever. And I find it fascinating. The number one thing about COVID-19 is we realized we have to be flexible in how we meet. And if we allow ourselves to meet virtually and via video conference and remotely, we start capturing the information that we're sharing instead of just speaking into the open air, we can actually accelerate productivity, and we can expand the reach of our collaboration, and we can include more people, and we can meet more frequently. And the world's kind of realizing, online's not such a bad thing. Actually, there's a lot of benefits. So I think it's great, but the number one thing that comes out of it is somehow we have to find a way to let our in-person experience be made available to the person who's not in the room anymore, because they might be home, they might be abroad.
So you're thinking there's going to be much more going forward? Well, actually, we all know this, that there's going to be much more hybrid, where everybody's starting to people are starting to go back to the office, but there's a real phased approach to that. They're not even really quite sure. Is it going to be 25% or 30% that goes back now and then more later? And, what's that social distancing? So, and then there's going to be all those other people at home. So how do we really bridge that?
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. I actually don't think it's about will you go back to the office. I think it's about how much will you go back to the office. Mm-hmm. Eventually, everyone's going to go back to the office. But now that we've had this taste of freedom and being able to work from your desk and pet your dog every few minutes, to go out and get a cup of iced tea and take a walk around, and I think people have really begun to appreciate that value of being able to work from home. I think it'd be really hard for someone to go, oh, you can never do that again. Sit at your desk from now on. And I think it's something where you've already seen some businesses have said, we're not going to insist people come into the office after this thing is over. You can still work from home. It's going to become a work perk that our company lets you work from home. And I think people are going to gravitate towards it. I think it'll be unattractive if a company offers you a position and insists that you have to be there all the time. In certain jobs, it's unavoidable. Manufacturing, hospitals, and there's certain things you just have to do in person. But for knowledge work, I even when we do return, I think there's almost always going to be somebody in your meeting who's not physically in the room anymore. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they'll be remote.
Even with let's go back 3 months. Even at that point, there was a lot of people that weren't in the room because we're a much more global workforce now, anyway. Right. And even spread out, across the country. So what do you think is going to help enable us to go forward? Because just Zoom meetings isn't cutting it.
That's right. I think there's a couple of key things we have to be at least sensitive to. And if we start to design around it, I think we'll be more successful. The first one is we have to, right off the bat, consider, okay, what information do we need to share? And how are we going to digitize it? It's got to now become available in ones and zeros so I can send it across the line to my coworker. And so for that reason alone, it changes the way we think about how we produce content. But we also have to be mindful of, there's almost a time suck or a time drain when trying to use certain tools. They take time. It takes time to walk up to a specific piece of technology or to launch a specific piece of software, to get everything up and running and loading it and saving it. And it takes time. So even though we're going to need some new tools to digitize our information and be able to collaborate with it, it also can't cause us to be less efficient. So that's one key element. How do we digitize everything? The other one is we have to be sensitive to the fact that majority of people still are not ecstatic about being plugged into their personal devices all day, every day, and using them for everything they do related to work. There are people that for sure bring a MacBook Pro into a conference room, use their Apple Pencil, or they make all their notes on a computer. But if you go into any conference room or any boardroom meeting in America, at least, you're probably going to find at least 40, maybe 50% of the people in the room have brought a pen and paper to the room still. And I think our industry in the past had kind of fallen short on designing modern meeting spaces around their needs. Everything is always pushing the envelope of what can you do technologically, but we haven't been considering how do we make the room accessible to the average person who doesn't want to be plugged in all the time. So that's something even more important now, where they have to be plugged in. So now that same person who brought pen and paper before now has to share their notes to someone over video conference. How do we enable that and do it in a way that's really easy?
So how do you enable that?
Well, we have sort of a twofold approach. Obviously, our camera technology is still the easiest, fastest way in the world to collaborate. I mean, I can grab a pen and paper and start sketching out my ideas in a heartbeat and instantly be sharing those across a video conference simply by plugging that camera into the USB port of a computer or into a web conferencing system. So the idea, for one, just I can digitize information using cameras, and a tabletop camera or a ceiling mounted camera, and anything I want to just sketch out is instantly accessible to people remotely. That's there. So you can use our technology to digitize information. But I think that there's one other really critical side is how do I very seamlessly and easily take all the information I've digitized and send that across the wire and have a nice collaborative experience with my remote, participants. And so we need something that can really sort of aggregate all of the information we're sharing and give you a very flexible way to do that. And a computer is not necessarily the best centerpiece solution for that. So let's get practical. So I'm in a conference room and maybe I want to plug in my laptop. Maybe you want to plug in your laptop next. Maybe one of us wants to wirelessly present something. Maybe I want to whiteboard something on the wall. Maybe I need to play a video. Maybe we're handing out documents and passing it around the room. Those are all normal activities in a conference room. Now, how do I share that with the remote participants? A lot of businesses have been using, especially since we've moved to web conferencing. We're using Teams, Zoom, BlueJeans, Pexip, Adobe Connect, WebEx, GoToMeeting, all these things. The key element here is they're all web platforms. They all run on a computer. Well, how do I wirelessly present from one computer to another computer so I can share that on the web conference? How do I physically plug in your laptop to that other computer? How do I capture that handwritten session on the whiteboard on that computer? And how do I seamlessly switch between them? I mean, the computer is really not the best device to try and aggregate all that information. You can't control it with a third-party control system. It has all kinds of new security risks. I mean, organizations already spend the majority of their day policing computers because they create vulnerabilities for the organization. And so what else can we use? The question with WolfVision is that's where our sign app appliances come in. Our sign app appliance lets you basically do everything you want to do in your meeting, easily connect and present whatever you want from whatever source you want. You can switch between multiple sources. You can share multiple sources simultaneously. You can mix and match. So you're wirelessly sharing while someone else is writing under a document camera, or someone's plugging in their laptop while another person's interacting with that. All interactive touch, all of that's part of it. And then you just push a button and launch the web conference also. And so now everything you're doing in the physical room to that local display is being shared with everyone who's remote. And it creates a very seamless workflow that it's really hard to reproduce either with a computer or even with a traditional AV equipment rack, because there is a bottleneck there. Most AV equipment racks have a device ultimately that's the one responsible for web conferencing. And so they have to switch to a specific source that will be shared on the web conference. Whereas with ours, it's just kind of it's much more fluid than that. You can share whatever you want at the same time even, and it's all going across the web conference. It's not like you're switching to a device and another device. You know what I mean? That's probably one of the most successful platforms the industry has seen in the last decade. I mean, it's already 5 years in, and universities and businesses are using this thing as the centerpiece of their AV systems, and they're fanatical about it. And we've got like a following of big fans of our tech. I mean, they're telling everybody they know this thing's amazing. Well, but how did we get known as a BYOD device? Well, the truth is, when we came out with that product, it didn't fit in any existing product category. And actually, it took the industry almost 2 years to realize that. We had really great wireless presentation in our device, and so we started winning awards for it, and everyone went, oh, it must be a BYOD device. It's like, no, it's not. But it took a while. Eventually, it was realized that we had created a product category of what are called all-in-one networked AV appliances. And actually, we had some shirts made up. I love AO Novice, all-in-one networked AV appliances. Even actually, it's cute. I was wearing one the other day, and one of my kids goes, "What's an AO Nava?" Glad you asked. It's an all-in-one networked AV appliance.
Those poor kids.
Yeah, I know, right? They know Dad's a dork. But an industry of all-in-one touchscreens existed, and they had various challenges and various levels of success. A lot of people don't want to get up from a conference table to go touch a TV screen. But there was no such thing that had the same value proposition that fit into an appliance. And so no one really knew what the devices were. And eventually, now that the industry started to figure this thing out, you're going to wait a minute. It's basically an AV system as an endpoint. You can deliver an entire collaborative AV experience with room control, source selection, switching, wireless presentation, web conferencing. Everything you need is in one box that you basically power into data, plug into power and video, and you're live, and you can remotely manage it. You can build an AV as a service model around it. The systems administrators can remotely troubleshoot and push firmware updates to all these endpoints. It's really an all-in-one networked AV appliance. And anyway, again, like you said, people they think WolfVision makes great cameras. It's like, you haven't seen nothing.
So it's almost a hidden story, really.
I think we have a lot to say. We're just not going to say it cheaply. We're not going to say it by just buying print and just bludgeoning the marketplace with our message over. We're going to develop value and relationships with people. We're going to show them how we meet their need. We're going to have consultative conversations with them and actually solve their problems. I think a lot of technology gets bought and sold, doesn't actually solve the problem. And we have a completely different sales process as well. We don't start with a features and benefits presentation and try and explain how great our stuff is. We start with, what's your challenge? What are you trying to figure out? We don't know if we can help you, but once we really get into the nuts and bolts and the mechanics of what they're trying to figure out and solve, then if we've got a solution, we solve their problem, and they love it. And that's why our customers are extremely loyal, because the truth is they didn't just buy another piece of tech that's sitting on the shelf. They actually are happier now. So it's different. There's something very holistic about our process and the way we communicate. Everything about us, it's kind of through and through. There's not a facade with our company. We make awesome stuff. We communicate it comprehensively, thoroughly. When we do engage with customers, it's deep. It's not just, can you send me a PO for 50 units and good luck? I mean, it's nothing like that. And I don't know.
We're taking our meetings over the last couple of years. We're really trying to get our meetings to the next level of collaboration, right? Certainly, and now we've got to really up that game, because we've got the situation where we're still going to be a lot of people that are remote and people back in the office. So what's that next level?
So what's the next level? I think we have to touch on both subjects you just brought out. We're going into the office. We're touching things. I don't want to be in the office. I don't want to be too close to coworkers necessarily for social distancing purposes. So I have to be able to engage a technology experience that's workable for me. And there's the actual technology itself. How are we going to successfully connect to remote participants? So the WolfVision portfolio of sign-up devices, all of them have the same general function that allows you to connect and present to your local in-room display and simultaneously launch a web conference with any platform pretty much, and be able to share what you're doing with remote participants and incorporate them into the experience. So it's like combining your in-room presentation switcher, wireless presentation receiver, collaboration functionality into the video conferencing endpoint itself. And then we'll go ahead and throw room control in there as well, so you can actually control the experience. What's really exciting on top of that, though, is this matter of the bring your own meeting experience. Now, a lot of organizations, manufacturers are promoting BYOM, as you probably heard about. And we can talk about what that is. There's already different definitions of what BYOM is. Some suggest you're launching the Zoom call on your laptop and then connecting it to the room. Other solutions have you launch the Zoom call from the room and connect your laptop to that. Who knows who will win out on that debate, but ours is the latter. Our device launches a conference and then allows anybody to come into the meeting space with their own personal device and participate, or launch that conference using their personal device. But again, it's our device that's actually running the video conference. What's compelling, though, is it allows you to have a really touch-free experience if you do it if BYOM. So you can use your personal device not only to launch the meeting's hosted by our product, but you're using your personal device to control it and interact with it. So you don't have to touch anything else in the room to control the room or the meeting or anything. You're using your own laptop or your iPad or whatnot. And so I think that's that germ component, where I have to make it easy for you to connect to the room and to people abroad, but I have to give you the freedom to not have to touch anything when you do that. You got to be able to use your own device to take care of it all.
Yeah.
And that's what our devices do.
And when you say devices, I mean, could that be Android? Is there any limitation to the operating system?
No. So it's really bi-directional. There's the matter of presenting to the system, and we've been winning awards. All of our products have won Best of Show awards at some point for our wireless presentation capabilities, because as you probably know, we're one of the only wireless systems in the industry that doesn't need any apps or special software or dongles or anything. We natively work with all the major operating systems. So Windows, Android, Mac, iOS, Chrome. You can just swipe in and hit connect and present. So that's great. And that's all also included in what we do. But there's the other direction, which is not just throwing your content up to the screen. How about being able to view what's up on the screen on your device, and or being able to control what's happening up on the screen from your device, and or being able to collaborate with the person next to you, what they're presenting. Can I interact with what that person is sharing? The Sign app and our platform, the platform of devices, they do that. So it's almost a threefold connectivity now, to the screen, from the screen, and being able to control it all through your own personal device. And you don't have to have any special software for any of that. It's done either through a web browser, native through our connectivity, or we do actually have a nice app if you want to use it that lets you kind of very quickly launch, web conferences and such. SignApp Pure Pro, it's got the capabilities, wireless presentation capabilities of our SignApp Pure, but now it adds that web conferencing component. So it's really an ideal product to just drop into either existing meeting spaces or new huddle spaces that you're building. You can put it into an existing system design and even control it via third party. So now it becomes a really slick way. Let's say a customer already has a Crestron or AMX or Extron control system. They could tap a button and launch a Zoom meeting, and then tap a different button and launch a Teams meeting, and tap a different button and launch a BlueJeans meeting. And it's a universal web conferencing appliance that can be added into a new or existing system design. You can also use our user experience. And something else we'll be showing is we have this really great app called vSolution app. And you can basically walk into any meeting room and tap a button and throw your virtual meeting room credentials right into that local system and have it call into your own personal meeting room. Again, touch-free experience. You're not having to, engage any other technology in the room except your own personal device.
One of the big issues that we all know is every company, every higher education, K through 12, everyone is transitioning to going back into the office or school environment. And frankly, everybody's scurrying. So how is your product really helping with that?
Well, the fact that it's an all-in-one means it's very easy to deploy, and the fact that it's software configurable. So that's a key one. If I want to deploy something rapidly, but it's going to take a lot of line level code, I've got a problem. But if I could pre-provision maybe a bunch of these devices in mass through a really slick software, just kind of configure them the way I want, can basically paste that config file to 100 devices and then just start to deploy them, that's pretty slick. Even you could drop ship them after you've configured them to other places and have them plugged in and start working. So speed of deployment is key. But I think the other part, as you touched, is the social distancing and sanitization requirements are probably the big one. So what we're seeing is people are not thrilled about entering into room spaces that force them to use community use touchscreens. That's just, you're begging for germs. Everybody's touched that touchscreen, and I've now got to be the next one to do it. And unless you want to have just somebody constantly spraying, sanitizer on your expensive AV equipment, maybe we should consider, is there another way we could do that? And then we also have these actual physical distancing requirements.
Back up, you don't get out of that so quickly. So what is the solution?
The sign app product.
And why? Why?
Great question. So if the sign app can power all the key functionality you want in your meeting and learning space, it has everything in it. And what's beautiful about the sign app is we have this really slick and easy to use user interface that you can engage through your own personal device simply by opening up the web browser. So what that means is everybody through their personal device can actually view, interact with, and control the meeting experience if you want them to. It can be password protected, so only the moderator or only the teacher can do it. But the point is, my own laptop is now the control system, or my iPad is the control system. And I can control everything in the room that I would have done through that physical touch screen, but I don't have to. So yeah, that's pretty compelling. But also that also then solves the social distancing element. So if I'm in the back of the room and I'm having a hard time seeing that 70-inch TV we installed a couple of years ago, because I wasn't planning on sitting 30 feet back, I was only going to sit 15 feet back, I can now look at my own personal device and right through the web browser see what's being shared. And that's really great. So everyone's personal device has become their own handheld viewing monitor, basically.
Mm-hmm.
What does my microphone setup have to look like when I've got people literally spaced 20 feet apart? Okay. That said, that's causing organizations to think, whatever we're going to do in our meeting spaces, it's got to be cost effective, it's got to be rapid to deploy, it's got to be easy, and it has to meet the other requirements too. So it's got to let people of all different technological, competency levels be able to present and launch that web conference and do it all without having to touch anything in the room. They got to do it from their own device, and it's got to be cost effective. Oh, and by the way, I might need a lot more of these because I'm going to be creating a lot more smaller spaces, lots of little huddle spaces. And so that's also going to intensify my need to manage it. So it better be networked. I better be able to remotely log in and troubleshoot stuff. Maybe I can outsource that as part of an AV as a service package to a reseller and let them remotely take care of all my little meeting spaces. But I think this is what we're going to see as the real catalyst for AV as an endpoint, where your whole AV system is one endpoint. You just drop a box in your meeting space, and as long as it can do everything you need it to do, why would you do anything more complicated than that? Just bolt the appliance right to the bottom of a conference table or behind a display or in a lectern, and you can go. And if in the modern world, it's not even a big idea to say, why can't we pre-provision those devices and drop ship them to the customer site? Why do I have to physically have an installer on site configuring it? Why can't I prepare it beforehand? It's all software. Pre-configure it, drop ship it, plug it in a network, start working. Yeah.
So in that scenario, actually, so let's say you're working with an integrator. That integrator pre-configures it, or reseller or whomever. They configure them, send them out to different rooms, different campuses. So can anybody hook those up? Like anybody?
Depends on the complexity of the installation. As far as our device is concerned, you bet. Yeah. I mean, we've got this incredibly flexible and configurable experience where this appliance is able to accomplish whatever you need it to do pretty much. And the way to set it up and configure it is in toggle switches and simple drop-down menus. You're not going deep with Python coding or anything like this. So to be able to configure it is not rocket science. If you can even do batch configuration. So I can set one device up the way that we're going to want it, and then match that configuration file on 100 other devices just like it, and just deploy them in different rooms with different IP addresses. So Yes, I mean, so to actually install our device into an Ethernet jack and plug it into a projector or a local display monitor, no problem. But it's the other stuff that we have to look at. Okay, well, do I need cable extension? Do I got to run HD-based-T or video over IP encoders and decoders through the wall? Am I going to use ceiling microphones? How am I going to am I going to do multiple projection systems, multiple displays?
Okay.
That's the AV component that still requires, in-person installation. Although I would say that our devices can still mitigate a lot of that. I mean, do I need as many TVs if I can just look at the screen on my laptop and see the content right here? But what we're thankful that we can offer the AV integration, the professional AV integration channel, is actually a way to get back in the game and start making more money again. And what I mean by that is, think of the post-COVID-19 world. It is going to be PC-centric unless we do something to stop that or offer a better experience for our end users. Right now, most end users are thinking, I'm going to use a computer, no problem. I'll put Zoom, Teams on a computer, we're good. And I'll tell you, we know from whom that end user is going to buy those computers. They're not going to be calling the major AV systems integrators and getting a quote on PCs. They're calling their CDW, their Insight, their Tiger Direct guy. And the IT department relies on the people they're going to buy those computers from are the same ones they buy their network servers, their switches, their network infrastructure from. So I think a lot of AV integrators right now are struggling with, how do I make money in this brave new world? I don't want to sell PCs. There's not a lot of money in PCs anyway. And meanwhile, like as we talked about earlier, PCs aren't the best product to meet the need, period. I mean, really, there's a lot of shortcomings of trying to use a computer for this application. That's where our devices become really attractive. It gives an end user all the connectivity they would want and all the functionality they need, and they would get out of a PC and more in a small form factor appliance. But that's an appliance that is built for professional AV systems integration. It doesn't have the same security risks that a PC would have. It creates a much more seamless user experience and workflow for the average user. And it's something that can be managed via a third-party control system, via our management software, and even by an integrator remotely. That's not something you can boast about if you're trying to sell PCs or use PCs. They're complicated and they're not that easy to deploy. So
the all-in-one concept is great. However, one of the pushbacks I hear from the integration community is there's not a lot of money to make because here you go, you're done. What do you have to say about that, Michael?
It's a great question. And this is something we have been keeping in the forefront of our mind since the beginning, because this is the channel that we serve, right? The key thing to realize is their world is going to change and has nothing to do with us, period. The customer is moving toward buying computers in their conference rooms and their meeting spaces. And they're using USB peripherals now. And they all know that. Unfortunately, our integration community is seeing a lot of cases, their margins are on a swift decline. And even the demand for their professional services from a design are being challenged. And also, when those organizations decide to buy a computer, they buy them from their CDW guy. And most AV integrators I know don't want to try and sell computers. That's not their business. So you got two things. They need solutions that are better than a computer for the end user, that they can profitably sell and make really good, healthy margin on, and even build professional services around. And then you have this whole goal of AV as a service, which our whole industry is going to transition into eventually. And this is where the all-in-one networked AV appliance is exactly what they need. It gives the customer, the end user, exactly the functionality they want without all the problems that are normally created by simply deploying a computer. And now the AV integrator can remotely support and manage that, and it's still part of the AV ecosystem rather than just the IT ecosystem. But also, the all-in-one is exactly what the AV industry has been needing in order to actually create profitable AV as a service offerings. A lot of companies have struggled with offering AV as a service because there's so much involved there. I've got to have a network operations center, an after-hours support, and even I'm concerned, how much do I charge for this? I don't know how often my equipment rack's gonna break down. Half the time it's because somebody else played with it anyway. So I gotta roll the truck and pay my technician to go on site to plug a cable back in that somebody else unplugged. That's all real world, right? with an AV appliance like this, where the whole AV system is basically being managed by this one endpoint, first of all, you minimize most of your points of failure right off the bat. And now you can easily remotely log into that one endpoint and make changes to it and troubleshoot it from afar, right from your smartphone if you wanted. And that is almost exactly what we've needed to be able to be profitable, because we just can't afford to roll a truck every time. And then the other conversations about how do you build out, on-call support and a decent service level agreement, those can be addressed in another conversation, but it's all doable, and it gets a lot easier to do when you're working with all-in-one appliances than it does when you're working with these big behemoth equipment racks.
Good. Well, interesting new business model for integrators to really think about.
Absolutely. Well, it's not like it's the first that's been done. I mean, most people are spending a lot of money for smartphones in their pocket, and they actually don't know how much that smartphone costs. They forgot how much they're actually paying for it. All they know is they're paying $50 a month. Actually, they might be paying $1,000 for a cell phone, which they never would have paid for in the past. But everything's rolled into that $50 a month payment. So why can't AV systems be this way? And then you stop, in a sense, that's the way to win the war.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's not going to come in and convince your customer to just change vendors overnight. It's like, well, I can't. I'm on a 5-year contract. I've got all my rooms and all my service and all my hardware is built into this one payment. And so I'm sorry, there's no room for you, other contractor, to come in and earn my business. I'm in a contract with these guys. So.
Well, so how about for the end user? Because I'm always hearing the end user saying, I do not want to pay forever on a device that I just purchased.
I think that this is where, and I hope people are able to subscribe to our conversations as part of the virtual collaboration experience, VCX, related to how to finance projects. There is a big difference between endless monthly payments and financing. And financing, I'm not even saying leasing. There's a difference between leasing and financing, as you know. With leasing, you pay for it, but then you eventually still have to return it. But with financing, you're buying it. You're just buying it over time. Mm-hmm. So the whole concept there is you can bundle everything you want into the financing. And you may not even pay that much more than you would pay outright. The benefit is you can upgrade everything immediately. So for example, let's say I have 100 meeting spaces I need to update, but I only have the budget to do 1/5 of them at any given time, right? So what I could do is I could make my rollout take 5 years and only pay for 20 out of the 100. And then eventually after 5 years, I'll have finally integrated everything. Or I could finance it. And for the same amount of money every year, that 1/5 of the amount, I'm actually able to pay for all 100 devices. But I'm going to pay them off over the next 5 years. So it still ends up ending 5 years in. I've paid for all my technology. The difference is you had it all in year one. And with that kind of financing, you're also able to take depreciation on a lot of these products because they're already in your possession. You're not waiting 5 years before it's in your possession. Mm-hmm. So it's compelling. It gives end users an opportunity to get the technology they need today, and they're not paying much more for it than if they paid for it outright over the next 5 years. But it also gives the reseller a way to bundle everything into that one payment. So actually the end user isn't getting nickel and dime. There's an agreement. You're going to pay us this amount over this amount of time, and everything you need is included. Don't worry about it. It's kind of white glove at that point,
Nice. Well, seems like we've already gone from soup to nuts all the way to the financing and AV as a service model. And this is a huge, huge topic. And it'll continue to be a huge topic and continually evolve. So Michael, how do people find out more?
Obviously, you can always find more information from us on the web at www.wolfvision.com, but you'll find that the real story is part of a conversation. So we would love to chat with you. We encourage you to reach out to one of us. You can email us at sales@wolfvision.us, but really, we'd love to jump on a call and chat about your specific needs and see if in any way we might be of service.
Great. Well, thank you so much. It has certainly been a great conversation for me.
Me too. Thanks, Cindy.
Bye.